So here we are going to prove that triangle ABC is an isosceles triangle. So this triangle is going to be isosceles. So essentially we're going to prove that two of these sides are congruent to each other. And we know that angle BDE is congruent to BED, and angle ABE, this angle, is congruent to angle CBD, that angle. Alright, so you can see that angle actually forms one of the angles of a triangle that I want to highlight here. So I'm going to highlight this one. And actually, maybe I'll change colors here to highlight the second one created by this other congruent angle. Alright, and now I'm going to draw these separately just so I can see them more clearly. So I'm looking at AEB. And DBC. So right away I have two angles that are congruent. Actually, I'm just going to use those as my first two given statements since I see obviously I'm going to have to use those. So what I eventually want to get to is that these two sides are congruent. And really how I'm going to do that is show that this triangle and this triangle are congruent to each other. And if they're congruent, then their corresponding sides need to also be congruent. So this triangle, this green one, and this triangle, first I'm going to just say that these two sides are congruent because I have these base angles. So since I have the angles and I'm trying to conclude that these sides are congruent, basically that's an isosceles triangle. If I'm given that I have two congruent angles at the base of a triangle, then the sides are congruent by the converse of the base angles theorem. So remember, the base angles theorem says that if I have these two congruent sides, then I can conclude that I have base angles that are congruent. I'm actually going backwards. I'm going from the angles to the sides, saying that those are congruent. And these are, that's BD and BE. So if I know that those are congruent, BD is congruent to BE. And if I have those two sides, I have angle, side, angle in those triangles. So those two must be congruent. Oops, those are not lines, those are triangles. Sorry, I wasn't thinking there. That is triangle BAE. Those must be congruent. And if those are congruent, this side AB, which now I'm going to mark it with 2, and this side BC, must also be congruent because they are corresponding parts. They're corresponding parts in congruent triangles, so they are congruent. Corresponding CPCTC. And if those two are congruent, then ABC is isosceles because I have two congruent sides. That's just by the definition of isosceles triangles.